What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Well, guys, RDR is going to be a top 5 come Tuesday when the new rankings come out. And listen, he might be a bit of an awkward fighter, but he is a real threat to a lot of guys at the top of 185 right now. So, Nick, let's just break this down. Let's start from a technical standpoint and talk about some of the things that he did that were really interesting against Robert Whittaker, who's a very interesting fighter to figure out in his own right.
Right.
And then kind of talk about what could be next, because now he's a top guy in the division, and he's made, quite honestly, a very quiet run to the top.
Right.
I mean, we knew who RDR was. We saw him fight Kevin Holland. We saw him last night, obviously. We knew about his accolades outside of the UFC, but he's really kind of thrusted himself into the top of the division in a very quiet manner. So what could potentially be next for him? I know a lot of people are saying that RDR versus Dricus would probably be the most awkward and entertaining fight of all time. I still think he's a fight or two away from something like that. But first off, your thoughts on the technical aspect of things.
Yeah, RDR really gave us a lot to unpack last night. And we have to remember who he was fighting, Robert Whittaker. And Robert Whittaker still looks like he's one of the best middleweights that we've ever seen. He moves so well. And we even saw early on in the fight when RDR would shoot those takedowns and he loved looking for that single leg, how alert and aware Robert Whittaker was and how he was able to evade that. His takedown defense was really good. And anytime he would even get sat down or put down to a knee, the way he would regain his balance and his base and turn back into RDR just so he could clear the space and get back out into striking range was beautiful. So RDR came out looking like he was really the bigger guy and had interesting weapons, but I don't think he had more weapons than Whittaker. But what happens sometimes is these guys who are big and they have these awkward styles, they wind up throwing things that you simply just didn't see coming, and maybe you didn't train for them. But RDR has that knee that he loves to throw. And that might be one of the most disruptive strikes that we've seen in MMA in the modern days, right? He's able to come in with really long punches, and I like to call them Inspector Gadget arms, because it feels like whenever RDR starts throwing, he starts like his arms extend out another 6 or 8 inches, and you're like, what is going on? He's covering so much ground. Same thing with the single legs. You'll see him; his feet will be inside the Monster M, and then before you know it, he shoots a single and he's up against the cage with the guy tied up. So RDR is a very interesting guy. He covers a lot of ground. But that knee is what sticks out to me. And a lot of times you'd see him set it up by throwing 2 long punches. He'd throw a nice classic 1-2, and then that knee follows the 2, right? We're doubling up on the power side. And what generally happens, you can go back to the Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards fight. Doubling up on the power side works really well. It can even finish a fight, right? So what RDR was doing last night is he would throw the 1, follow it with the 2. Naturally, what people will do is move their head to the outside of the 2, right? Out of harm's way. But then there's a big knee coming out of nowhere. And usually, like Leon Edwards was a kick, right? His came after the 2. Yeah. Brought it up and went for the head kick. But RDR is throwing this knee. And it's really interesting because it has 2 great targets to land on. Either you're going to slip and dip your head down like Kamaru Usman did against Leon, and it's going to hit you in the head, or you're going to stay standing with good base and balance, and it's going to go right up the middle into the sternum or right into your body, and that does a lot of damage. We saw him land that very, very clean. And I thought that when he started to really put that out there, he found his groove midway to the later part of the fight, and he was really doing a lot of damage on Whittaker with that knee. Plus the heavy hands that he likes to throw. Again, he's kind of an awkward fighter, but the awkwardness is what got Dricus Du Plessis the world title. It could very well be what gets RDR into a title fight. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I love that we call these guys like awkward or it looks like they're ugly. Man, the techniques that they're using might not be conventional, but they're certainly working.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people online last night kept saying, oh, man, he doesn't take shots well. Right. And I'm like, yeah, maybe optically, like he kind of is, you know, when he gets hit with a big shot, there's a lot of movement and it looks like he's getting hurt by these shots. But it didn't, you know, it didn't seem to faze him.
Right.
He took some big, big blows from Robert Whittaker, and I think he only hit the canvas once, and that he recovered from pretty well. So, you know, it's all about what are you able to do to make your opponent frustrated in there.
Right.
And Robert Whittaker is a hard guy to frustrate because he himself is very frustrating. He's got very light footwork. He covers a lot of ground. He works behind a jab and he uses great footwork to get in and go off angle.
Right.
And RDR didn't look like a bad striker in there last night. He just looked like a guy who wasn't quite as good of a striker as Robert Whittaker.
Right.
But Robert Whittaker is one of the best strikers in the division and has been for a long time. But he was able to make up for it in other ways, you know, with the grappling and all of the takedowns and everything that he did with the knees and stuff like that. It really showed that RDR's game is pretty complete. And here's the thing. Robert Whittaker is the gold standard test for who fights for a title at middleweight.
Right.
I mean, and there's a factual litany of proof of that.
Right.
If you beat Robert Whittaker, you fight for a title. And the only reason I don't say that if you beat Robert Whittaker, you win a title is because Khamzat has not won a title yet.
Right.
That may change here soon. So who knows what's going to happen with that fight. But the point is that if Robert Whittaker, if you can get past him, you are good enough to fight for a title at middleweight. And in most cases, actually get that title shortly thereafter. So RDR is in very rare company.
Right.
And now he's in the top 5. But here's the problem. There are a lot of guys at the top of 185 that are really good.
Right.
Nasruddin Imavov is sitting at that one spot. You have Caio Borralho who's staking his claim, and people are really getting behind him. He's starting to become a fan favorite.
Right. The fighting nerds, yeah.
Fighting nerds are very good. You do have RDR in that mix as well.
Israel Adesanya.
Izzy's there. What are you going to do with him? And then, you know, after last weekend, Paulo Costa is trying to stir up some drama.
Right.
We know he hates Khamzat. There's that beef there. So what happens between Dricus and Khamzat? How does that play into things with Costa? The point is, I think RDR needs to win at least one more before he's in a title fight.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have Jared Cannonier versus MVP coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe the winner of that fight would be a good one. Maybe Israel Adesanya himself would actually be a good fight to put RDR in there with next. I think either one of those two would be a pretty good option. I don't know that they give him Nasruddin. Maybe they do, and see if he can just really grab that number 1 contender spot. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think RDR is 1 or 2 away from getting a title shot.
Yeah, and I like the Paulo Costa one because Paulo, his ranking was kind of similar to RDR's right before he fought. I think it was like 12 and 13.
Yeah, 11 or something like that.
Something around there. So that one's pretty interesting, but I do feel like he's on the opposite side of the rankings that they're going to give RDR. I think RDR is going to move closer to the championship number than further out of the rankings. Right now, he should be number 5. The favorite for me would be Israel Adesanya because people, if you've got a guy like RDR who's very likely going to become a contender, and not a contender, a title fighter, you need him to go out there and fight people that the crowd knows. Because RDR he can be a star. Yeah. He's an absolute stud. He's very, very skilled. But people don't exactly know him yet. And it's not even his fault. He's doing so well. He's climbing the ranks so fast. He hasn't had time for people to get to know him yet, right? But Israel Adesanya is a guy that everybody knows. He is known around the world. He is a part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And a guy like RDR getting in a cage with Israel Adesanya does massive things for his career. Like we say all the time, former champions are so rare and so hard to find in this sport, especially ones that are still meaningful, that still, beating them actually.
Like Robert Whittaker.
Like Robert Whittaker. The only way you can one-up yourself from beating a former champ like Robert Whittaker is beating the guy that beat him in Israel Adesanya, right? So I think that'd be probably a great way for him to ease himself into a title, because I'm with you. I don't think he's getting a title shot next. I think he has to work more, and 185 is just stacked right now. So there's plenty of people, and we've got the title fight in mind. So I think Israel Adesanya is probably the best option across anybody else that he could fight. But you have to remember, last night he called out both DDP and Khamzat. He said he wants to fight the winner. He wants to fight both. He doesn't care. I find that interesting, and I will say, at first I'm like, come on, RDR. You fought Robert Whittaker, but you saw what Khamzat did to Robert Whittaker, right? Like, he broke his jaw, and you went the distance with him. So before I got into that whole conversation with myself, I decided to say, you know what? Styles make matchups. Let me remember that styles always make matchups. And just because Khamzat was able to choke him out doesn't mean that because RDR didn't choke Robert out, that he's any less of a submission ace or any less of a good grappler. It's just that Khamzat's style and his game plan is that of a get in there, get it over with quick. RDR feels like kind of DDP in a sense, where the first couple rounds might not be the prettiest. He might lose them on the scorecards, but by the time round 3 comes, he's this full-blown storm. It appears he's getting bigger and stronger, and his gas tank is only getting better as the rounds go on. So I think that fight is actually very entertaining, but I do think RDR needs one more, and I would say give him somebody like Israel Adesanya, because of course we could go with, a couple of the other guys in the top of the division, or we could go outside of the top 5, like you're saying, go Paulo Costa, maybe a Shara Bullet who also fought on the same card. And I get that Shara Bullet and RDR aren't exactly on the same trajectory as far as the middleweight division's concerned, but Shara Bullet is a meaningful character, right? And he actually does have some star power. So I'm not bullish to say that Shara Bullet will be fighting RDR anytime soon, but there's a lot going on at middleweight, and there's a lot of people that need fights. And oddly enough, there's a few guys that are coming up that not a lot of people know about, but they're very, very good. And then there's a few people that maybe aren't quite as good, and their skills aren't there, but they absolutely are a star. They've got the public's attention, and those are the fights that really need to happen, because the UFC can make these fights very marketable, get a lot of attention on it, and then the best man gets their hand raised, and then they move up the ranks. So, yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, and since you mentioned Shara Bullet, I think Shara really showed us that he's back on track last night. He had that aura losing moment when he lost to MVP.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of this scary guy that didn't really speak much. And then last night on the mic after he won, he's speaking almost perfect English.
Great
I'm like, where did this
English,
come from? But, Shara is going to be a meaningful figure at 185.
Yeah.
How far Shara is going to go in 185, I don't know.
Right.
Truthfully, I think it really only comes down to his grappling, because when you watch him strike, he looked really good last night.
His kicks are amazing.
Kicks are not telegraphed at all.
No.
I mean, he's chopping the legs from the inside, chopping from the outside, using good body kicks. He covers a lot of ground when he strikes.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him be a little bit more active with his hands and kind of mix that in with the kicks, but his kicks are really good. I think he's got some of the best kicks at middleweight, and for sure the least telegraphed, because when I was watching last night, I was thinking, man, this guy can land a kick almost at will, because he's so good at throwing it without any tells, which is going to make him difficult for any opponent. Now, I don't think he's ready for an RDR just yet.
No.
Because RDR thrust himself into the top 5, and he's got now a former champion on his resume. So he's looking to people ranked ahead of him, other former champions like Izzy, a big name like a Jared Cannonier, Nasruddin Imavov, something like that. And Shara's probably going to get somebody in the top 10 to top 15.
Maybe Paulo Costa.
Maybe. Now, that would be a fun one. Costa versus Shara Bullet.
Now we're talking.
But Costa, I think he's trying to angle himself. He's flying to Chicago to go sit ringside because he's got his beef with Hamzat. I think he's kind of hoping that Hamzat wins that fight so that he can try to strum up some business for a title shot.
Skip the line.
But I think Shara Bullet, if he can, he's got enough time left in his career, and he's got enough skill on the feet that if he can improve on his hands a little bit and work on the grappling, which he did look. I mean, Marc-Andre Barrial is a gatekeeper. Let's not.
He's tough, though.
Yeah, mix. Let's not over exaggerate things here, but he's a tough big guy.
Oh yeah,
and he's game until the very end. And he was trying to get Shara down multiple times. He was trying to kind of big brother him in the clinch and stuff like that. And Shara looked very good. He responded very well. So I'm still bullish on the Shara Bullet. I haven't hopped off the Shara Putin Magomedov hype train just yet.
No.
And I think after last night, we still have some really exciting fights. I'm looking to see him finish the year with one more fight. And I think he'll win that one. I'd like to see him in the top 10 or 15 by the year's end. And then I think 2026 could be a big year for him. But this video is about RDR. And I think, hey, nobody's really thrust into the top 5 as unassumingly and quietly as RDR has in recent memory. But I'm here for it. I like the awkward RDR experiment. I want to see him stylistically against Dricus at some point, whether that's for a belt or not. I just think the fans, like all of us, are like, what the hell would happen if we got RDR and Dricus in there?
Crazy.
And I think the UFC is going to make that fight, whether it's for a belt or not, just because you can't. It's like the train wreck. You can't not look. The shock value of RDR versus Dricus stylistically. Good luck to us and the rest of the people that do this for a living in breaking that down and predicting what would happen in that fight. But ultimately, a lot of exciting things for RDR. And one final thing, I do not think Robert Whittaker should hang his gloves up. A lot of people were talking at the end of that fight last night, oh, it's time for Rob to call it a day.
That's crazy.
It's time for Rob to retire. Like, no, Robert Whittaker went 5 rounds in a very close split decision, I remind you, loss against a guy who's a top 5 guy that's got some real skill in the division. Robert Whittaker can do whatever he wants as far as I'm concerned. I think he does deserve a retirement fight like Dustin Poirier. Definitely won't be a main event for a pay-per-view card, but send the dude out in Australia. Put him on there against somebody he can beat. Let him ride off into the sunset. Let his B-roll run. It's not time for Rob to hang him up yet, but the future's bright for RDR.
I totally agree. And let me leave you with 2 final things. So RDR versus DDP. If that happens, my only prediction so far is that one or both men wind up falling out of the octagon. That's the only thing I can think of. Like the door opens up because of something insane. But let me just say real quick, because we were talking about Shara Bullet. You took the words right out of my mouth about his hands. I think his boxing is totally fine. He just doesn't do enough of it. If he started throwing a little bit more hands, I think he could really cause some problems and open up even more of those kicks, which if you looked at the stats last night, it was like 25 kicks landed to the leg, 25 or so landed to the body, and 20 or so landed to the head. So he's evenly distributing his kicks. If he started to throw some hands with that a little bit more, I really think he could find some really impressive knockouts to add to his highlight reel. And, the only other thing, he hits that jump knee very well. So if he keeps stringing along victories, and obviously he lost his last fight before this one, but he bounced back. And that's what we always watch for fighters. If they can come back stronger after a loss, deal with some adversity, some questioning themselves and whatnot, then they can come back stronger, mentally ready to move forward. I think Shara Bullet can move forward in the division. But yeah, I think he does need to work a little bit on his grappling. I don't think he needs to exactly work on his boxing. I just think he needs to incorporate it more. But yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
Well said.